Welcome back to your CoC 201 training. This module is going to focus all about HMIS. So what is HMIS? HMIS stands for your Homeless Management Information System, and it's a local database used to collect client-level data and data on how housing and services are being delivered to folks experiencing homelessness and at risk of homelessness. So every CoC must have an HMIS system, must select a software, and the software has to comply with HUD's requirements around data collection, management, and reporting standards. So the Eastern and Western PA CoCs currently work with Ecovia, which is the vendor, and the name of the HMIS software we use is called Client Track. So if you hear the terms Ecovia or Client Track, that is referring to our HMIS system. Sometimes the HMIS system is also referred to as PA HMIS. So all CoC and ESG funded projects must participate in HMIS. Other homeless designated programs that are not CoC or ESG funded are also encouraged to use HMIS. Having more programs using HMIS really helps us have a better, more accurate picture of the overall homeless system. For example, how many resources are available to folks? How many folks are coming through the shelter system? That sort of thing. So the HMIS is very important to the CoC. It plays a very important role. HMIS can help the CoC, again, measure homelessness and how well the system is working to address it. The more programs you have participating in HMIS, the more you can actually do this in an accurate way. The HMIS system helps to actually operate the housing and service system, including coordinated entry. So projects are using HMIS to really run these programs and keep track of all the data that's required. And then lastly, it's really important for reporting to HUD. HUD has certain reports that CoCs have to submit annually, and the HMIS system plays an important role in making that happen. So what are the responsibilities of the CoC related to HMIS? First of all, the CoC has to designate an HMIS system for the CoC's geographic area, must designate an HMIS lead, and in the Western PA CoC, the HMIS lead is DCD. A CoC has to review, revise, and approve HMIS privacy, security, and data quality plans, must ensure that HMIS is compliant with HUD requirements, and ensure consistent participation in HMIS of particularly CoC and ESG funded programs. So just a clarifying point, while the management and the authorizing the HMIS system is designated to the HMIS lead agency, the CoC does maintain an oversight role. So the CoC program interim rule makes clear that the CoC itself is ultimately responsible for HMIS and making sure that the lead agency is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and not the agency that gets the grant. The CoC really has to guide the HMIS lead agency to make sure they're fulfilling their duties. And because the HMIS is a shared responsibility between the CoC and the HMIS lead, the expectation around each entity's role related to HMIS must be spelled out in your, whether it's your CoC governance charter or your MOU with the HMIS lead agency, along with who's going to play what role. So does the CoC board have a role with HMIS, the collaborative applicant, advisory committees? Some communities have designated committees that really are providing oversight of the HMIS system. And the CoC has to formalize this designation of both the HMIS system and the lead agency through a written agreement. And again, that could be done in your CoC governance charter, or it could be through a memorandum of understanding between the CoC and the HMIS lead agency. So again, the CoC has to designate that lead agency, and in the Western PA CoC, it's DCD. So related to staffing for HMIS really varies from CoC to CoC. There are a lot of roles that the HMIS system has to play, which we'll go over in the upcoming slides. And it varies who's going to be responsible for those. So it could be the HMIS lead agency staff, it could be a subcommittee within the CoC, that sort of thing. So it really is up to each CoC to figure out how they're going to implement all these various tasks that the HMIS system is responsible for. So what is the HMIS lead responsible for? And again, some of these tasks may live with other entities within the CoC, and that's really up to the CoC to lay all this out clearly. So first of all, the HMIS lead needs to have technical expertise. They need to maintain knowledge of the data and technical requirements from HUD. They're also the system administrator, meaning they're making sure that HMIS network is functioning properly, have a calendar of events to support year-round HMIS operations. That can include when are reports due, when are trainings happening, when is monitoring happening. They set up your workflows in HMIS. They add, remove, and update users and programs, manage software updates, all that jazz. The HMIS lead also provides technical support, so help desk support for technical issues, monitoring data collection, looking at compliance from users, and then they also work with the HMIS vendor, so troubleshooting issues, upgrading the system, that sort of thing. The HMIS lead is responsible for HMIS security, so making sure the data of the folks who are being entered into HMIS is safe and protected following a security standard monitoring process. The HMIS lead is responsible for privacy. There have to be policies, procedures, and a plan for ensuring client privacy and protecting clients' personally identifiable information. The lead must make sure that HMIS is compliant with privacy requirements. Data quality, so the HMIS lead must monitor data quality, work with users to identify and resolve data quality issues, perform data quality maintenance, for example, removing duplicates from the system, merging records, closing old programs, ensuring that HMIS is collecting the HUD required data. Training. The HMIS lead must have a plan for how HMIS users are going to be trained. That includes not only training for new users, but also refresher training, report training, system security and privacy training. And then the data analysis and reporting requirement. So HMIS lead plays a key role in managing data, both imports of data into the system and exports, making custom reports as needed for the CoC, extracting, compiling, and analyzing HMIS data, including those HUD required reports, and preparing and submitting the HMIS APR, and APR is the annual performance report they have to submit to HUD. So I mentioned that there are certain system-wide reporting requirements for the CoC. These terms, you may hear them throughout the year, so we just want to touch on what they are. These are the reports that the HMIS lead has to submit to HUD every year. So first is the LSA, the longitudinal systems analysis. Every year HUD submits a report to Congress, which is called the AHAR, Annual Homeless Assessment Report. So each CoC has to submit an LSA, which is a very complex report, but basically it includes information from your CoC about all the people and households who are served by the homeless system over the course of 1 year. And it includes a lot of information like demographics, subpopulation, length of time homeless, what type of programs are people accessing, what's the pattern of system use, and the housing outcomes. There's also the system performance measures report, again, submitted annually to HUD by the CoC. The system performance measures are quantifiable metrics that really look at how your system is addressing homelessness and whether it's effective. So the SPM pulls data on 7 measures, including length of time homeless, returns to homelessness, number of homeless persons, employment and income growth, persons homeless for the first time, prevention, and how folks exit from the system, whether they have a successful exit to permanent housing or retaining their housing. So the SPMs are looking at a lot of different measures of success within the CoC. The last slide of this module is the rest of the system-wide reporting that's required annually. So we have the point in time count and the housing inventory count. So we've mentioned a couple of times, the point in time count is an unduplicated count on a single night in January of all the people in a community who are experiencing homelessness. That includes sheltered, which is emergency shelters, transitional housing, safe havens, and unsheltered. That's the PIT count. And then the housing inventory count is an inventory at a point in time of all the programs within the CoC that provide beds and units that are dedicated to serve people experiencing homelessness. So the point in time count is people, and the housing inventory count is all your housing resources. We also have the APR and the CAPER report. So APR stands for Annual Performance Report, and CAPER stands for Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. So all CoC funded programs have to submit an APR to HUD annually, and all ESG funded programs must submit a CAPER report to HUD annually. And these reports include performance data, grant management information. So projects have to be able to generate these reports from the HMIS system, and HUD really uses these reports to track the progress and performance of your HUD funded grants. And lastly, the HMIS project itself has to submit an annual report to HUD. They have to submit their own APR to HUD. So that's our HMIS overview, and we'll see you back for the next module.